What was the title again? Kiruv destroyed.
I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with this title, but I guess you could. The Kiruv destroyed.
Well, we'll unpack that.
Quote unquote Kiruv, quote unquote destroyed.
Quote unquote your life. Quote unquote podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
Quote unquote. If this is Tasting and Torah, where's the tasting? Let's start with the tasting.
In the words of Andrew Dice Clay, I'm over here now.
Let's make a bracha, shall we?
Let's make a bracha too. So, given the topic that we're talking about today is kind of a
Kiruvin.
Kiruvin
ruined my wine.
It's a very intense and heavy topic, at least for me. So let's give a bracha for clarity.
Yes, indeed.
For clarity and for, as our roommate calls it, the vision.
Yes.
We all have the vision, the chazon, and
the clarity to be able to discuss a very heavy topic.
Yes.
And keep it light.
And be fair about it.
Yes, and be fair about it. This is going to be, you're in for a ride, guys.
Yes. All right.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. It's a journey, it's a process, it's a story, and I think that just to frame it, to start off with the picture, there was two pictures that were put on there. One of them was Neo.
Yeah.
Right there about to take the red pill.
Mm-hmm.
And the other image was from that movie.
From the movie Trading Places, in the end, when, if you guys ever seen it in the 80s, when, not the stock market, it was a the Chicago Mercantile Exchange of the commodities market closes, and this old man and his brother, the guys who tricked Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd into switching places, they lose all their money. And so one of the brothers, I guess it's Don Amici, he's yelling, "Turn those machines back on!" He just wants the machine, to the market to keep going so they can at least recoup some of their funds. So he's going insane. It's like, turn the machine! He wants to revert back to what was.
Now you listen to me. I want trading reopened right now. Get those brokers back in here. Turn those machines back on. Turn those machines back on.
The way things were before.
Yeah. And it's actually funny because in my case, I'll tell you guys later in the story, I used to work in the stock market, and just before I did Tshuva, that was my life for 8 years. And it was almost like, and I was doing fairly well, and it was almost like a thing where it's like, sometimes you wish, like, turn the machines back on. Like, where was that? Where was the good and the comfortable old days where things were as we understood them, things worked, and we made our money, and everything was. Now suddenly life is so complicated. Suddenly Hashem is testing you. Hashem is there's a rabbi, there's a few rebbeim, it's a kind of a known thing in Judaism. Some people, I don't know if they hold by it, that all of the stuff that you did before tshuva, it's like midah keneged midah.
Comes to bite you.
You have to essentially, like, all, for example, like there's a story.
Do a tikkun for it?
Yeah, it's like tikkun, like all the money, let's say you made on Shabbat or Yom Tov, there was no bracha supposedly, so like when you do tshuva, you have to quote unquote give that back. Somehow, some way, somehow, through some heshbonot, through some calculations, whatever it is. That's a deep conversation, deep idea, but...
Yeah, it's definitely more than one conversation here.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah, you have your opinions on it, obviously.
I was going to say something insane, like, what if Hitler would do tshuva? I'm like...
Oh my God. He would have to become a monk, or I don't know, Baba Sali or something like this. And Hashem would put him through
let's not go there.
We don't know.
So... those two movies have a lot to do with Teshuvah. First of all, The Matrix is really all about becoming about Teshuvah. The Matrix is about realizing that the world we've been living in was a dream world, and there's a real world out there that ain't fun.
Yeah.
And there's that famous scene with Cypher where he makes the deal with the devil, where he makes the deal with...
the guy who eats a steak, and
he says, ignorance is bliss.
Do we have a deal, Mr. Reagan?
I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
I'd much rather close my eyes and ignore everything and not be working so hard, because the real life is hard work.
Sure.
And the whole idea of Neo is becoming new, as having a new name. It's
Yeah.
like the Baal Teshuvah saying,
Yep.
now I'm not the same person that I was before. I am Neo. I'm not Mr. Anderson.
Yep.
It's saying, I can now bend reality with my mind because I know what's really going on.
The spoon and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
There is no spoon. It's
Yeah.
really you who's bending. And in a
Yeah.
deep, in a very, I've actually heard that several philosophy courses have opened up
Of course.
in universities after that movie came out. I mean, that movie took the world by storm.
Yeah, it did. I'll tell you, when I saw that movie, this is also part of my story.
It
I'll
was
get into it.
1999, right?
I was 19 years old. I came out of the theater, and I'll tell you about this whole chapter with my father. But I called my father, and I said to him, I don't remember who directed it.
The Wachowski brothers.
Yeah, I said, these guys owe you royalties. My father goes to me, no, they don't. This is a very common thing in Hollywood. You think they're the only ones that are learning Kabbalah and all this kind of stuff? Mistaken. There's
all those letters and the numbers and
there's a whole undercurrent. I'll tell you, when I was in Los Angeles, there's a whole undercurrent of people that the world doesn't know about. They work in Hollywood, they write screenplays, Jews, and they're producers, and they all keep Shabbat. Some of them
they're influenced
Kabbalah,
by.
Yeah, they're influenced. They keep. They're like what I call crypto frum people. You know,
Crypto frummy.
Tales from the crypt. Exactly. So
it's virtually.
you walk into their house, they wear baseball caps and they have Kabbalah books all over the place. That's what's going on.
We talk about this a lot, Tzvi and I. But
Yeah.
I when my mother saw people in Tel Aviv handing out pamphlets for this populist Kabbalah promoting, ends up being a legit cult.
No.
They're called Kabbalah La'am, Kabbalah for the people, for the masses. My mother's instinctive response was, Kabbalah ze lo la'am. Kabbalah is not for the masses. And as a Rambam, Maimonides points out in the laws of the foundation of Torah, is that those things called Ma'aseh Merkava, which means the workings of the chariot, those which we would call today esoteric or Kabbalah, those should only be approached once you become very firmly based with your meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the title. So specifically, your title, Kiruv Ruined My Life, is a title which you actually wrote that. I'm going to leave it to you how much of that to share.
No.
But there was something that was going on in your life, and you just decided, this is too much, I can't take it.
No.
And if I hadn't been in this precarious position of being branded as a Baal Teshuvah, meaning religious people are saying, this guy's religious, but he's different, and he's this, and we can't fit him, and that is causing certain difficulties in life where you have this conviction, I'm doing the right thing, but there's these external issues which are in the way, or maybe other
cultural or whatever.
Cultural, all kinds, which I'll leave to you how much to discuss.
Yeah.
And then I realized how much this means to you. I'm like, dude, you should talk about this.
No.
Like, let the world know.
I was thinking to write a book about it, but writing a book is you have to sit down, and it's it could take months and years, but it's you could just sit down, you could talk about it for an hour.
Here, and I really want to give the floor over to you. I just wanted to introduce and to talk about this touchy subject because I'll tell you, I grew up in the old city of Jerusalem, like across the street from a very well-known world-leading Kiruv organization, and I have my observations and my opinions about people who have gone through that system, and I've sometimes seen things that I don't really like, and we've spoken about this a lot. There's a lot of things I do like, but there's also a lot of things which I find to be an issue.
Yeah.
And I find that one of the difficult issues of integrating into society, when you actually may even have something to contribute to society that they don't even realize that society needs.
Yeah.
And you're coming with this, but it's so hard to find, that causes so much distress and difficulty and frustration. And I think that there's so many people out there who can relate to that, that I figured this would be an excellent title to get people's attention. So down the line, people will be able to say, hey, I heard Tzvi talk about that. I've been experiencing something like that too. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my incentive to talk about that. And so, all right, let's take it from here. You want to go from the beginning to the end? And the beginning.
I can go from. You know what? I'll go from the beginning because it's funny. Like I remember when I first started on my journey, I remember talking to my father, and he himself had misconceived notions about why I started doing what I was doing, why I started learning what I was learning, and why I started keeping what I was keeping. And there's so many components of our stories any Baal Tshuva that are never told, because we're never given a platform to tell them, and even if we do tell them, we can't tell everything. You know, like Rav Dror even told this story. He's like, I can sit here for hours and tell you about every single instance of, you know, Hashgacha Pratis and this. He's like, I can't. It's impossible. It's like Hashem telling you the whole world.
Start.
Where do we begin?
You sent your father down the journey.
Before I talk about my father and his theories and ideas and his influence on me, you know, as far back as I can remember, first of all, I just want to tell everybody watching, I was not born in the United States. I was born in the former Soviet Union. Well, what is now the Ukraine.
Not for long.
In a place, the Ukraine, my Ukraine, yeah, exactly, as Putin has anything to say about this. In a place called Lvov. Lvov was a, you know, it used to be part of Austria at one point, changed hands like millions of different times, Austria, Poland. Many people don't know this. Lvov is a place where the Austrian School of Economics came from a Jew named Ban Mises, which eventually influenced the Chicago School of Economics, which is Milton Friedman, which is the economic system essentially that we have today in the United States, which comes from Lemberg, Lvov. Most people don't know this.
Wow.
So I was born in Lvov. My parents were born in Lvov. The reason that all three of us were born in Lvov is because after World War II, all of my grandparents, who were not from Lvov, all four of them were from different places, came to Lvov because Lvov was a hub city in, you know, a post-war hub kind of thing.
Is that where they met?
That's where they all met. All the grandparents met there. So a key component of what I'm going to say is, for people who maybe know or privy to this, my father's family, my grandfather's family, is from a place called Berdeja. Private joke. And my grandfather, my father's father, went to Heder, went to Hebrew school until he was 12 years old, and then after that, you know, he couldn't.
Went into the workforce.
Well, he went into what's called technicum, which is kind of like, you know, for like basic accounting, and then he ended up being in the military. Oh, like quote unquote communist.
Grandfather.
Young, yeah. This is who I'm named after. Tzvi /
The Yom
Gregory.
Kippur guy.
Yes, I'll tell you that story
Yes.
as well. So yeah, and then he went to the military. He was in World War II. That's a whole other story. And after that, he came to Lvov, and he became the head of what's called the Vayentorg in Russian. It's the army supplier, the PX of the entire city, which was a big thing, first of all, in general. Second of all, for a Jew to be appointed as such.
And they all knew he was Jewish.
Yeah, well, at that time, they did appoint Jews to high ranking, you know, positions in not just the army, but just Jews could get.
This is
high
what,
ranking
1970s?
things. No. After the war.
48. I mean,
You're
47,
talking 47,
45.
47.
No, so they met. I just didn't know what
No,
age
my
they got there.
My grandparents met. They got there right after the war, 1947.
Okay, so the early 50s.
Yeah.
Late 40s, early 50s.
70s already. My parents. Yeah.
No, I was thinking
Yeah.
born. I just had the whole thing wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, not the Yom Kippur War, the
Yes.
World War II. Anyway, so yeah, so they all met. Like my mother's family's from Kiev / you know, my mom's father's from Odessa. My grandmother, my father's mother is from like Zhytomyr, also a big place for
I
Hasidim.
always called it Zitomir.
Yeah. So
Okay, Zhytomyr.
we call it Zhytomyr, you know, like
The Jewish.
yeah, Jewish world, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so just some background. My father grew up, you know, he had two older brothers, and my father grew up being what's called, you know, under the auspices of my grandfather, who was like essentially a crypto Jew or a crypto.
What is that? What do you mean by crypto?
Crypto from me, like undercover or under the radar kind of person who kept certain holidays and mitzvot, whatever he could. My grandfather, for example, kept Yom Kippur. How did he keep Yom Kippur? He would not shave on Yom Kippur. Then he would come to work because he couldn't not come to work as a, you know, Soviet Union. Just show up to work. Didn't do anything. Just sat there like this at a desk with a newspaper, and people knew not to bother him. They knew exactly. Well, they didn't know what it was. They knew he was doing something, and it was a holiday for him, or a day that he, you know, they saw he wasn't eating, he wasn't talking to anybody. He just sat there, read a newspaper, just nothing, no work.
Was that at that time? Would that be risking his life?
It wouldn't be risking his life. It would be risking his job. It would be risking his rank in the military, and it would be, you know, basically, yeah, it would be risking his.
This is your father's father. Or your
Father's father. So yeah, so that's what he did. And for example, Pesach, and my father found this out later what my grandfather was doing, because my father didn't know at the time what was happening. my grandfather would, a table like this, and he would tell my father and his brothers, listen, you are going to, I don't care what you have tonight, your little parties, your little get-togethers, you're going to sit here with me, and you're going to go, you're going to eat this, and you're going to eat this bone, you're going to eat this thing, you're going to take this lettuce and take this thing, you're going to drink this wine. He made cherry wine, and then he would tell my father, who was the youngest, Itzik, my father's name is Igor, Isaac, but he would tell him, Itzik, go take this glass of wine, open the door, and put it on there's like a little counter there. And my father would be like, who's that for? And my grandfather would say, oh, that's for him. And my father would be like, who's him? My grandfather would say, don't worry about it. The less you know, the better. So imagine your father's asking you to do all these things. Imagine your father asks you, go hang from the ceiling. We do this once a year every year. Go hang from the ceiling, from the I don't know, what do they call it? The ceiling fan, chandelier. Why? Can't tell you. You got to do it. It's what we do.
It's just funny because if the worry is that he should talk at school and tell people Eliyahu Navi and weird stories, then now he's going to be telling people that he's doing weird stuff which he doesn't even know why he's doing.
Exactly.
Either way, he's going to talk about it.
He's going to talk about
what
it.
are you gaining?
What are you gaining? What?
Like being so secretive.
No, because if he talked about it in school, then people would talk about it in...
He talks about the fact that he was there and he had to move a cup of wine and open the door.
That's not the point. The point is that the regime knew exactly what these things were, just like the Nazis knew exactly what these things were.
Describing to your friends doing something weird without attaching it to Eliyahu Navi is still describing doing something Jewish, even if you don't know it.
Exactly.
You're going to tell your friends about weird stuff going on.
The point is these friends had parents who were, let's say, anti, or even if they were Jewish, let's say.
My point is, what are you achieving?
Who's achieving? My
What
grandfather?
is your grandfather achieving by not explaining the weird stuff, but still doing the weird stuff?
Because then it would just be a thing where, let's say people didn't know what it was and they would find out what it was actually Jewish, and that's a big problem. You have to understand something. The Soviet regime cannot have people believing in a God.
No, I understand that. Yeah. I thought was my question. I thought was clear. I just did something really weird last night. I'm telling my friends. You know, we were drinking wine, and my dad asked me to go open the door and put the wine here. Like, okay. So why isn't that a problem?
So if you're my father, you're not going to go telling people we did this weird thing. You don't want to embarrass yourself. And they were asking, why is it? My father was one of these people, like, he actually would want to probably explain. I never asked him this question, but I'm guessing he would actually want to explain why. His friends are very intellectual. He's intellectual.
So it's like, if he can't explain it, just something.
Just something weird and it's embarrassing. They don't even talk about it. If he knew what it was, he'd be like, "Yeah, we do this because of that, and Egypt and Moses and da 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 da." Next thing you know, KGB, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? I thought we canceled this when Lenin came. After that story, we fast forward to. I won't go into the details of how my family came to the States. Parents were what's called refuseniks. They were not allowed to leave the Soviet Union for 10 years.
Sharansky.
Not to that level. Sharansky sat in prison, but my parents were, when they got married, my mother's father had what's called military clearance. He was an engineer on missile silos, and he had like blueprints of like where missile silos were. You understand, this is like the 80s. This is when the Soviet Union and Reagan, yes. Cold War and Star Wars and all that stuff. So
mutually assured destruction.
Exactly, mad. Everybody was mad. So they actually at some point told my father, listen, if you want to divorce your wife and go by yourself, you're more than welcome. My father said, take a hike, I'm not doing that. So my parents basically got stuck from 1977 to 1987, and we finally left. When I was 6 years old, we finally left the Soviet Union. And we went through what's called the Austria-Italy pipeline. I don't know why, for some reason...
Pipeline?
Like, not an actual pipeline, but the...
No, I didn't think you went Shawshank Redemption on us.
That's what it's... No, that's actually what it's called. It was the Austria-Italy Jewish immigration pipeline. There's actually a group on Facebook called the Austria-Italy Pipeline, where Russian Jews who lived in places like Ladispoli, Italy, or there's two places, Santa Marinella or Ladispoli. That was our last stop before we came to the United States. So we lived in Ladispoli for I think 3 months. We lived in Vienna for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Ladispoli for 3 months. Actually, my dad actually at some point learned Italian. I remember him speaking to our, landlady, negotiating like the rent price and all that kind of stuff. So we went through the whole process, and then we got to America, and I distinctly remember my father. I'm like 7 years old, 8 years old. We just got to America. We're living in Brooklyn, and I remember like seeing on TV Christmas trees or trees. So you have to understand something. In the wintertime in the Soviet Union, we celebrated Novi God, like you have in Israel. We had New Year's, quote unquote.
Wine.
So when we came to the States, I remember. So New Year's came along, or what this mom that was Christmas came along, and I remember asking my father. I said, "How come we don't have a New Year's tree in our house?" And he told me, "Greg, that's my English name, or Gregory." He said, "We are Jews. We are in America now. In America, the tree represents Christmas, and we are Jews, and we have Hanukkah, and you have like you're not going to get presents. You're going to get Hanukkah gelt." And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "It's money." I was like, "Okay." So,
now we know you're Jewish.
Yeah, exactly. He sold me. No, but the thing is, what I didn't realize is like my birthday, which is like December 9th, the secular birthday, falls. It's first of all, it's Zot Hanukkah. It's actually on the Hebrew calendar. It was the 8th night of Hanukkah, and so as a kid, I used to get double money. I used to get a present for my birthday, and I used to get a present for Hanukkah. So that was like you didn't have to do much convincing to kind of convince me that we don't need a tree. I don't need any presents. I got presents for my birthday. I was okay. I was very easily, I guess, appeased by that explanation as a kid. But with that said, I after I heard my father say that, subsequent years as a kid, I was like 7, 8, 9, 10. I remember seeing my father taking kind of the reins of every holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, before I even knew what these things were. Just the high holidays and Pesach and Hanukkah. These like holidays that everybody, whether you're secular or religious, everybody celebrates these or kind of commemorates them.
They're sort of national.
Yeah, they're national even here. So I remember my father taking them very, very, very seriously to the point where on those holidays, we actually became damn near, I would say, almost Orthodox. We almost kept the Yom Tovim, at least on Rosh Hashanah, at least on Yom Kippur. Like we didn't eat on Yom Kippur. Pesach, we did the Seder. Obviously we used our phones. At the time we turned on lights and stuff like that. There was no phones.
Exactly.
This is the late 80s, early 90s, but still, like we didn't keep the Yom Tovim. We knew there was Orthodox Jews keeping Yom Tov. This, that. We were like, okay, we're not Orthodox.
What contact did you have with Orthodox Jews?
What
were they to you?
The only contact we had, Chabad was very strong at that time. We didn't get sucked in necessarily by what's called the Litvak or the Flatbush crowd, but we did get quote unquote. We encountered Chabad encountered us, and they were very, as always, they were very warm, welcoming, and to me that was like the vision of the observant or the authentic Jew that I had since I was a kid.
And here we are in Crown Heights.
I mean, and I didn't even know about this whole, I didn't even know about the Rebbe, this whole ideology or whatever, and then what came later, obviously the Moshiach, whatever, I'm not going to get into that, but like, we just knew, okay, Chabad, these guys with hats, they do, I actually had my bris when I was 8 years old, folks, not to get too graphic, because they closed, obviously, all the synagogues.
My skin off my back.
Exactly. Here all week. My father, actually, and his brothers, before all the shuls were closed in Lvov, I believe in the early 60s. My father was born in 54, his brothers were born in the late 40s, early 50s. So all three, my grandfather made sure that all three got circumcised, or real Brit Milah. They brought in a moil, the whole bracha, the whole thing. Not a hospital, but a shul. Mine, obviously it was in a hospital, but they had there was a moil there. There was a whole. I remember like laying there, and my father doing a kiddush with the Rav behind. There was like a curtain. It was a medical facility, but there was behind the curtain. He's sitting with a rabbi doing. The brachas and all these things. They were reciting some tehillim, some prayers, My father's just following along. I remember seeing this. This was like, imagine you're not a baby, you're an 8-year-old person, boy, and they give you, in my case, I was a tall kid, I was a big kid, they didn't give me enough, they gave me anesthesia for an 8-year-old, but I was a height of a 10-year-old.
Did they give you wine?
I think they put something, I don't know, symbolically, whatever it was. I think,
I thought maybe that's where you started with your wine.
Yeah, who knows, it definitely did put me to sleep. That I can tell you, I was awake for the whole thing, unfortunately. whatever, you know, it is what it is. You know, as we call it, we said tikkunim in the top of the program. I guess that there you go. We all have ours, and yeah. So I just remember my father being very strong on these things because I guess he figured to himself, you know what? I'm here in America. I was stuck in the Soviet Union for 10 years, and I'll be damned like a monkey's uncle if I can't keep any of these things. If I at least do what I want to do, at least what I can do to keep the tradition. And yeah, and over the years, I remember we moved from Brooklyn to Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and we started going to this place called, at that time it was, I mean, still around, we were going to Bris Avraham, which is a Russian Chabad place run by Rabbi Zaltzman. And I just remember being kind of active in that place, you know, again, only on the holidays, and I had a lot of respect for, you know, Orthodox people. I had a lot of respect for the people that were keeping stuff. And but at the same time, I was like, you know, I would love to do all this stuff, but I don't think, for some reason, I always thought you have to dress a certain way to do it. Or you had to walk a certain way to do it, or you have to talk a certain way.
Some people still think that.
Some people still think it, but at that time it was a very external thing for me. And I was like, well, I wasn't born this way. I wasn't raised this way. I didn't even go to Hebrew school like a lot of kids did. You know, like a lot of Russian kids were sent to Hebrew school when they came. You know, their parents didn't. It was this weird dynamic of like, you know, a lot of people watching would probably relate with this. You know, a lot of Soviet parents sent their kids to Hebrew day school. So what the kids saw in day school, like kosher and, you know, Torah learning, what they saw in school was a completely different thing from what they saw at home. The parents did not keep Shabbat. The parents did not keep kosher. You know, they ate this and they ate that, and there was no Torah at home. So that caused complete confusion. So you may ask, why did this happen? You know, why did these people, you know, these rabbis suck these kids into day school? The short answer is these Jewish organizations were giving financial support to some of these people. You know, they're helping them find jobs. In exchange, say, you know, send your kid to my school. I'm going to suck him into. That's a whole other. You know, you want to talk about Kiruv and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. They kind of tried to suck these kids into, you know, orthodoxy, so to speak, or at least teach them Torah. But at the same time, the parents were missing it. So then you have a chasm, you know, and a lot of just kind of confusion going forward from that.
Just a note on modern day Kiruv, the kind of things that I've read on different blogs and stories of parents who are talking is that sometimes when their children become religious, they end up becoming more distant from their parents, and they go like, isn't Torah supposed to be peace? Isn't it supposed to be mending relationships, not creating these rifts? Like, you got to find a way to deal with the, and sometimes it can be the parent saying, listen, if you really care about me and the Torah says you need to respect me, then you must do. But it's not always the case. But sometimes it's just people are a little bit too radical.
But it goes back to, I thought about this and I'm thinking, well, look what Avraham Avinu did. He just went against his father to his face.
I mean, that's, yeah.
He basically, you know, this is the son of one of the wealthiest, you know, billionaire, idol.
That's a
merchant.
little bit different. I mean, it depends. You know, you're in a different kind of society today.
Yeah. Are we?
The question is, would that fly?
You know what I mean? Look at what's going on now. It's Nimrod.
Well, I just heard I heard a crazy story this week about a woman who had a roommate who in whatever, the Colombia or whatever. Yeah. She had with her a book of Rav Hirsch, Chorev, which she of course had in the closet and didn't touch, but her non-Jewish roommate started reading the whole thing, and she became very, very learned, and she learned, and she this and she that. So she once asked one of the rabbis, I think it was Rav Yaakov Weinberg, she asked him all kinds of questions, and, you know, buying meat from a kosher meat store, can I buy it because of this? Because when they do the ritual slaughter, the shechita, at that point, it's no longer considered an organ from a living being, and every minute, like all these different questions. Yeah. And he asked her, like, why is this such a whatever? Like, she said, I'm not Jewish, but the thing is, because I keep the Noahide laws, then I have to make sure that when the animal was actually slaughtered and killed, that was actually dead halachically. Yeah. So she knows all these questions and concepts.
You can't eat from Noahide says that you can't eat from a lot.
Right. So she starts going on, and at a certain point, he kept asking him questions, and she really knows her stuff. Yeah. And he ended up asking her, so why don't you convert? So she said the reason she doesn't convert because ger hamid gael ki katan hanolad dami. A person who converts, it's like they're newborn to their parents, and therefore they're disassociated from their parents. Sure. And she said, I just can't do that to my parents.
She didn't want to be. Yeah.
I can't do that to my parents.
That makes sense. So in her case, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's amazing, right? Because there needs to be a sensitivity. Why create a rift if I don't have to? Sure. You know, it's like there's got to be a way a way to mediate and to navigate and to show, this is what it means to me and who I am. And I'm not trying to change you, but that doesn't mean I'm going to accept this lifestyle.
So, it's you just touched on a subject. We're not trying to change, we're not trying to change anybody else. But what I noticed is that when I first started keeping Torah and mitzvot, Jews, like say friends or other people around me who weren't keeping it, became really, like I'm doing something. They feel like it's almost an affront to them, like they feel uncomfortable by my. I'm not forcing them to do anything. I'm not telling them to do anything, but they almost felt uncomfortable by it. And I asked a rabbi one time, because we're all one neshama, and when a Jew who's not doing his part in the collective, the machinery that there's a collective soul, he feels like it's almost like he's looking at me and saying, "How dare this guy be more holy than me?" Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of
like your very existence is a challenge to their lifestyle.
Nullifies his life almost. Like not
nullifies, but it's like a challenge. It's like you're making me uncomfortable.
So we were keeping the holidays, very only on the holidays we almost became very, like I would say, almost like frum people just on the holidays. So now we get to my father's, whole portion of the evening. On the way back, walking back from the synagogue back to our house, you have a 25-minute walk to and from. And I remember, like, I'm 14, 15, 16 years old, and I start asking my father questions. So my father was and still is on another level. He is an IT guy. He's an IT professional. He's a programmer, a developer, what have you. And in the late 70s, he was doing his master's thesis in university, and he came across this thing where he was doing something or developing something called a random number generator. And through this process,
it's the matrix numbers. Lots of just numbers and gibberish.
Well, it's something that I had to do. I remember having to do it in high school when you learn the code. The language BASIC, and you have to create a random number generator. But he was doing something much more advanced than BASIC. He was doing some kind of like crazy algorithm, and he realized that. And he's an applied math major. He realized from this project that there is absolutely no such thing. And some of you watching may argue, if you're mathematicians or IT people. But he came to the conclusion, as many other scientists came to that same conclusion, that there's no such thing as a random number. There's a very long sequence of digits, but that sequence does have a pattern, but our little puny, tiny little brains cannot figure that pattern out. Now we probably can with computers and this and this. Yes.
A beautiful mind.
Correct.
That's the moment he saw the patterns, he knew he was crazy.
Exactly. So my father stopped at some point. No, so my father, in my father's case...
he thought the Soviets are out to get him.
Exactly. Well, in my father's case, he didn't go crazy, but he finally realized at the age of 23, 22 that if this is the case, then that means nothing is random in this world. No happenstance is random in this world. There are, in fact, something called, we'll use the term, quote-unquote, miracle in English, which is a horrible word. Translation in Hebrew, it's nes, which is a whole other deeper meaning, as you'll explain.
Well, nes means trial or triumph or flag.
So, and then from there, I don't know how, he tells me that he made the leap from there to there must be some force that created us. But he had no idea what that actually, at the time when he, Soviet Union, before he met any Chabad rabbis and before he ran into any shul, at the time he had no idea what that means. He was just like, something created us, or maybe something created us.
He just realized the matrix has us.
Something like that. Well,
I'm talking about number matrices.
I know, I hear. It's just,
you see what I did there?
Yes. He realized something.
Matrica.
He realized something, and then it's funny because he tells me now that there, his friend who lives in Israel, Nazaret Elite, who's actually a Chabadnik, him and his family, he became
a Chabadnik in Nazareth.
In that exactly.
That's hysterical.
That's a tikkun.
Yes.
That's a tikkun of a tikkun of a tikkun.
The Chabadnik
wrapped inside
of
a matryoshka, wrapped inside a riddle, wrapped inside a box, and we don't know what that is.
And hidden in the ground.
Exactly.
With the Holy Ghost.
Exactly.
Here's our Holy Spirit.
Pause. No offense to our Chabad friends. Anyway, so And he tells me that him and his friend, before his friend was anything religious or anything in Israel, they were talking about sitting over cognac, non-kosher cognac, and talking about these kind of things. Existence, creation, what's out there.
Life, the meaning and everything.
Exactly.
They do that in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
The number 42 keeps on popping up in weird ways.
So, yeah, and then you fast forward, and then so my father started telling me his theories on these walks back and forth. He started telling me, we live in a virtual world. First of all, nothing is random. No such thing as coincidences. We live in a virtual world. The Torah is a manual.
How old are you?
I'm like 14, 15, 16,
So 14,
17,
15, 16,
14, basically high school time.
And your dad's like Heidegger is walking down the shore talking. He's an existential philosopher from Germany, who was actually the teacher of Hannah Arendt. The banality of evil.
Yes.
He also was recruited to the cause of Hitler's recruiting all these intellectuals for his college, whatever. It's a whole story. But then, in any event, existential philosophy to a 14, 15-year-old.
Not just it was deeper than that. It was like, and then he started talking about what else? Oh, I would ask him. Okay. I would ask him about evolution. He goes to me, okay, Greg. What operating system did you use when you were 13 years old on your computer? I said Windows 3.1. What operating system do you use? What operating system do you use now? Windows 95. And then a year later, what operating system we have on a computer now? Windows 2000, whatever. One of them was like skipped. What operating system? And then they kept going.
We're not going to talk about Windows 98.
He goes, yeah, exactly. Windows Vista, whatever. And he goes, right, okay, so you want to tell me these things evolved, right? I'm like, yeah, they evolved. He's like, did they evolve on themselves? Did Windows 3.1 create Windows 95? Or did they spontaneously, sporadically evolve? I go, no. He's like, was there a programmer? I go, yes. Who's the programmer? He's like, Bill Gates. He's like, we had a programmer. He gave us a manual. The manual is called the Torah. He runs test cases, like adversity. You understand? He runs extreme extremities. What can you take? They say God's never going to give you a test you can't pass. And on this kind of stuff.
We can always argue that what if it's not a test? What if you're actually meant to suffer
it's
no, seriously.
Like we're going with quotes the whole time. It's a test. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
You are the Frankenstein of God's something.
So I'm 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And I'm like getting all this. My final penultimate question to him was, okay, we have a creator. Who created our creator? He goes, Greg, I have a question for you. In typical Jewish, fashion. He goes, can a computer ask who created it? And can a computer ask who created its creator? I go, I don't know. As far as we know, no. He goes, so why are you asking?
It's interesting you say that because I recently reviewed Dawkins's God Delusion, and one of his... I was actually kind of let down by that book. I was expecting a lot more of it because I was reading it with excitement, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to hear this, and it's just like, that's it. But one of the points that he makes, which he takes a lot of pride in, is you can talk about a prime being, but if you haven't explained what created it, then you still have a problem.
Sure.
And he talks about that in terms of complexity. In other words, anything that is created as complex as it is, that which created it has to be at least as complex as that.
Yeah.
And therefore, there must be somebody that created it. And
the problem is our puny minds. Even if we were told, we wouldn't be able to even understand. It would be like an alien language.
Oh, but I'm saying, the fact that he takes so much pride in thinking that that's an argument that hasn't been answered, it really baffled me.
It doesn't baffle me. It's a common argument I've heard.
Yeah, I'm saying, but why is that such a big deal? I mean, if the whole point, look, he does address Thomas Aquinas, which Maimonidean also existentialism talks about that too, in terms of God being primal being with a capital B, or primal existence. In other words, that the force of being itself. I mean, the force of being, if you're going beyond dimension, beyond time, saying what created it is kind of a non sequitur question. It just doesn't. Whatever.
No, I guess the question is they're asking not what created it, but just where did it even come from?
Okay, but if you're saying that it's the force,
Why does it have to bother us?
But if it's the force of being itself, it just is. It's not something that needed to be.
But the question is especially for Jews. Why is it bothering us? Why does it want us to do all these mitzvot? Leave us. We didn't have leave Smeagol alone, as I used to say. Leave Smeagol alone. It's like, come on.
Yeah,
we don't want to be
fine.
As they say in England, I can't be bothered.
We spoke about this in our last podcast. Is without Sinai, then you have all these issues.
Without Sinai, you get to live.
Yes. The moment you have Sinai, or as one of our commenters said, interesting theory.
Yes.
The moment you have, interesting theory.
Mr. Bones, I want you to die. No, in this case, I want you to live. Yes, one Brazilian.
1 second. Let's.
Sand
It's gonna.
points.
Okay. Well, so he doesn't have to work.
I work
That
hard.
slouch. I know.
I made
$5,000 a day. Yeah, I know.
Right,
We all know $5,000. That's why he's stuck in this apartment.
You laugh, $5,000 a day. I once made, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually in 2008 when the market collapsed. I once made, not shorting, but buying and selling over and over and over and over again, $12,000 in one day.
Nice.
Once.
Once 12,000, but a few times 3,000, 4,000. The wins and losses were like, the wins were like 3,000, the losses were 1,000, so it all equaled out to $40,000 in them. This is the kind of stuff, I'll get into that later. Turn the machines back on.
We're gonna be here all night. Looks like that.
Oh my
By the
God.
way, the fact that Facebook Live just ended means that we just spent an hour. Because it ends
you mean
after
Instagram,
an hour.
you mean Instagram.
The Instagram Live. Yeah, we're doing 5 different platforms here.
Igor Lauren, I already heard of all this. Challah is amazing. Igor Lauren, yes, because it's all your fault. Anyway, thank you.
You know what I'm gonna.
So was getting these kind of theories and talks. There was another thing that my father would say. Yeah, we live in a virtual world. We are programmed. We are playing out. He would say something along the lines of, we are playing out certain
Cosmic.
You got a situation over here.
What's going on?
We are playing out certain. We have different. We think we have free will. Oh, you want to fix that?
Yeah, let's see what's going on.
Yeah. It's
Let's check it out.
Something popped up over here.
I don't know what's going on there. No, I think it's recording.
Jennifer is.
No, it's recording. It's fine.
Oh,
That was just the other. It was just the other. video.
Macs to me are like such a nebulous creation.
Do you know the cool thing about a Mac?
They're cool, but they're just like
Why the
kind
Mac's
of-
symbol?
it's like the alien. Stuff.
Why the Mac's symbol is an apple with a bite taken out of it.
We spoke about this.
Yeah.
We spoke about this. Okay.
But the
Tell
whole
everybody.
idea of Macintosh, talk about teshuva. Once you
Yeah. You get
have the curse of knowledge.
Yep.
But there's a cool thing because the word for death, da'af,
Yeah.
is the proper pronunciation of da'af, of the tree of knowledge, means the tree of death.
Dot. Yeah.
Yes.
That's crazy, man.
So once I heard is that Rav Zilberman, alav hashalom, once said, the pasuk in Mishlei says, Da'at kanita, ma chasarta. If you have attained knowledge, oh, what have you lost?
Oh, yeah.
It would say like, oh, you have, to gain knowledge, you have had to lose
you lost that
a
steak.
lot.
You lost that steak in the steak, the piece of meat that the guy had in the Matrix when he was sitting there. He said ignorance is bliss. So
Yeah,
you
but
lost
Da'at kanita is like, that's how you read it. No, because the way people usually read the pasuk is Da'at kanita ma chasarta. If you attained knowledge, what have you missed?
Yeah.
Like you have everything you want.
Yeah.
Right? But he said, no, that's not how to read it. It's Da'at kanita ma chasarta. Oh
Exactly.
boy.
Yeah.
You had to really give something in order. It's like with in the Avengers, the Infinity War, in order for Thanos to get the Soul Stone, he has to give up something. He ends up killing Gamora, because in order to gain that power, you need to really give something in return.
Yeah.
You want knowledge, you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the word for knowledge and the word for death are synonymous. Etz hada'at, death.
Yeah.
Death.
Sound like Yemenite or Arab.
Yeah, but that's the proper pronunciation.
Like the iron. Yeah.
Da'at is not the proper pronunciation.
Sure.
In Hebrew, we say das.
Yeah.
Why? Because the taf at the end has no dot, so it's das, but the Yemen is das.
Well, that's Ashkenazi, das.
Right. So I'm saying, but it's just a cool. I'm not making this up. There is an etymology that connects death to knowledge.
Sure.
Yeah.
But so I was getting a lot of the. Just we have different. He was talking about. My father was talking about. We have different. So we think we have free will, but in reality, there's like a set number of
permutations.
Yeah, permutations, or what you call futures, based on our choices, but they're set.
It's funny you should say that.
That
is a Purim idea.
So,
which has to do with wine.
Listen very carefully. When my father was talking to, I don't know if he's watching. He started learning with this Rav Yossi Kanelsky, he's the son of Rabbi Mordechai Kanelsky, in who started Bris Avraham. And my father started giving over his theories to Yossi Kanelsky. Yossi Kanelsky goes, "Did you learn such and such savor of Hasidus and blah 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 blah?" It wasn't any Chabad book. It was a very obscure Hasidic book from some other non-Chabad Hasidus. My father goes, "No." He's like, "Oh my God, this is the stuff that's what you're talking about is essentially in a different language written in that book." So my father's he got all proud. He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing Berdichev proud. I'm doing our origin proud." So it's essentially looking back, I was getting all of these ideas, and I started thinking about them myself. It'd be one thing, if a father can give something to his son, or a kid can get anything from their parents, and it doesn't mean the kid is going to absorb it or understand it or even care. First of all, I was naturally inquisitive about these things, and I had, I guess, enough seichel, more or less, to understand basically, kind of on a very rudimentary level what my father was explaining at the time. So now, at this point, I'm in my 20s. We fast forward to my 20s. I'm in college. I'm walking.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Baruch College.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you guys know anything about Bernard Baruch, he was actually vehemently. He was an anti-Israel person. It's interesting because, I guess it's part of CUNY. Yeah. It's part of CUNY, and all of the CUNY universities. Every single vacation that we had was centered around Jewish holidays. So we had the spring vacation, where most universities had their own thing. We had it around Pesach time, or the whole, all the 8 days of Pesach. So, it was it catered to be any person who actually cared about these things, who kept, the whole holiday or whatever it was, just like Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, whatever it was. Yeah, so I went to Baruch. I was kind of involved Jewishly, I was part of this thing called BARS, which is the Baruch Association of Russian Students, which is kind of a conjunction. Most of the kids were Jewish anyway. It says Russian-speaking students. And I was involved but it was part of Hillel. It was the same thing.
Secular Rage. It
was like Secular Rage, but Hillel was there as well. And actually Rabbi Stolik over here, who lives on Crown Street, he's the Rav of the Baruch Hillel. I mean, I guess it's the Baruch Chabad now. Baruch Chabad. And he would come sometimes. I remember distinctly a rabbi would come and say, "What do you want to put on tefillin?" So I think I put on tefillin once with him. And then, years later, I actually ended up meeting him here, at one. I think it was a Hadar Torah or 770, one of these places. He's a very nice guy. At Miela's house. So I was part of that. I was actually also, that's when I started DJing. I started getting into, I guess electronic music. I actually was already into that since high school, but that's when I actually got the bug, and I bought turntables, I bought a mixer. That's when I got into the club scene. The club scene in New York, especially Manhattan at the time, was thriving. It was still kind of, electronic music at that time was still in the underground. That's a whole other podcast I could do with you guys. And it was a very kind of nascent thing.
That's a good title for another podcast.
Yes.
The Electronic Underground.
Exactly. And, it was a very kind of raw, very, how should I put it? Yeah, nascent kind of a scene. For those of you guys who are watching, you probably remember, if you're old enough, there was a place called Twilo, there was Sound Factory, there was Tunnel, there was Limelight. My partner Yeshua knows everything I'm saying. Baruch Hashem, we click on many levels. That's one of them. He was also a DJ, and he's part of a different generation. He's older than I am, and he was on the West Coast. So I started getting into all these things, especially music, and I was And looking back, I remember I was like going to clubs and I was like I was obsessed with music. I actually at some point wanted to make, production and DJing essentially my vocation, my career.
Yeah, I think we should
In my early
put
20s.
on, once we upload this to
Yeah,
YouTube,
we're gonna put on some tracks.
we should put on some of the tracks that you made
Yes.
some really sick stuff.
I mixed. I didn't produce it, but I actually did produce a couple of tracks that are on YouTube, and I could put them on. It's funny actually. When I was 20 years old, I did a few productions. I was using like very simple like, like sampling software and like just these beats that I got from like Germany or something like that. I remember producing tracks, and I was like 20 years old, 21 years old, sitting in my parents' literally basement. And I would get emails. This is when the internet first started. We had back then, Baruch Hashem, we had email. And I would get emails from these tiny, tiny labels in like, that's our friends Hala again. I would get emails from tiny labels in, like independent labels from like one like from Portugal, another one from England. They sent me an email saying like, listen, we heard your tracks, and that's when we had that website mp3.com. Anybody could post their tracks. That's when it became Bandcamp later on, bandcamp.com. But before that was mp3.com, and any Joe Schmo could put their tracks on there. So I had my page on there, and these guys heard my tracks, and they would say, "Listen, we like where the direction of the sound is going on your production, but we want you to polish it up. We want you to make it sound more professional." And I told them, "Listen, I'm not, I'm a 20-year-old kid. I don't have all this crazy." Equipment, $10,000 worth of equipment. I'm just using these samples. They're like, well, listen, man, you better get some because like your sound is good, your general ideas are good, but you need to tighten it up. You need to make it sound more, ready for the dance floor, so to speak, ready for the clubs. At one point, actually, I think my uncle wanted to invest, a couple of bucks, and he told me, for a studio to build me a home studio, and he said to me, "Can you guarantee return on my investment?" I said, "No, my goal is not even to make money." At that time, no one, most people who were producing electronic music at that time, it was so underground, no one wanted to, the goal was not parnasa, the goal was to get like your track on what's called a white label on vinyl, on one piece of vinyl, and that for that vinyl to make it in the hands of a famous DJ like Danny Tenaglia or Danny Howells or Paul Oakenfold or Sasha or Digweed, and to be played on the dance floor. That was our goal. Our goal was not to make millions of dollars like a VC and, I don't know, $20 million and get on the...
Put out good music.
Yeah, and just get it in a deep, dark room, people dancing. There was a track called The People in the Big Dark Rooms. I'm praying for all the freaks, That was our goal. It was like a vocal in one of the tracks. So... Yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering where this is all going.
Yeah, it's going.
Okay.
So
as long as you know.
So I realized at that time.
We like where this is going.
Yeah.
You gotta tighten it up a bit.
So no. So I'm it's leading somewhere. Believe me. So I started dabbling in music around that certain time in university. I was actually one of these people. I was kind of struggling in school because it was in this country they make you take classes. Repeat classes that you took in high school, and I wasn't really challenged enough in university, so I was kind of struggling. I was here and there. I'm kind of giving you guys a personal thing. I was on probation at one point, so at one point I decided to go to work, and I had a friend who worked at a trading firm, which started out being in Flushing, Queens, and ended up being later on Wall Street, which is today actually the office, what is now today a kosher steakhouse and a boutique hotel, the Satai, and the, what's that name of the steakhouse? Reserve Cut. But before, it was an office building where I actually worked. So I went to work as a day trader, what's called a scalper, high frequency, high volume day trader, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange securities. And I kind of taught myself. I started doing this when I was like 21 years old, and I pretty much did it for 8 years. So basically my life for, a good part of, my 20s was three things. It was, apart from, obviously like relationships and with the opposite sex, it was going to work, trading, making money, aspiring to be some kind of like DJ, a producer on some level, and traveling the world. That was three components of my life.
What countries have you been to? Sure. No, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. Okay. England, Netherlands, Germany, Brazil, Argentina, Thailand, Ukraine, like came back to visit.
Yeah, I understood.
Obviously, Canada. Well, Canada's whatever.
Blame Canada.
I said Netherlands, and yeah, in Israel like a bunch of times. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Right.
That's all you get. And all these, I used to go with my parents to like, these Caribbean, so Mexico and all that kind of stuff, and like Dominican Republic and blah blah blah, and, cruises. So yeah, I mean, I was, traveled the world, and then I just looking back, I realized that like my experiences in the club world, I wouldn't go, people usually think, oh, you go to a club or a bar to pick up, guys go to pick up girls, or I don't know, whatever, do listen stuff. My whole thing, I was like this music dork, literally dork, geek, and I would go and I would like just to hear my favorite DJ, and I would listen for the tracks, and would do what's called train spotting, which is a movie, but it's also train spotting in the music world is when you stand there and you listen for the track and you name the track. Not only you name the track, you say, is it the original mix? Is it the remix? And which remix is it? It's kind of like,
wow.
It's like being Ovadia Yosef L'Chavdil of this field. You know what I'm saying? Which commentary is this? Which Tosafos? Which Rashi? Which this? Which Daf? That's where I was at. That was my life. But I realized, like, at that time, what was it really? All it was just me seeking some kind of spiritual experience. Being on the dance floor, dancing, or even if I was sitting, just closing my eyes and listening to some people it's monotonous. To me, it was kind of like, and the people who actually understand this, you get into some sort of, that's why they call it trance. You get into some kind of transcendental and transcendent state. Whether it's like trance, progressive house, deep house, tribal house, whatever it is.
That's what trance stands for, transcendental?
Trance music. Why is it called trance music? The whole thing was
transcendental.
Cool. The whole thing was that you combined, I mean, a lot of people, it was combined with people taking what's called MDMA, mind-expanding drugs, whatever it is, what's it called, hallucinogens or whatever it was, so people would get into, with the help of these substances, would get into a trance. I didn't need that. I had the music. I was one of these weird people. I never needed, so yeah, once in a while I had a drink, whatever it was, but, I need to pop pills to get into the sound. So yeah, and that was me for pretty much my 20s. At some point in my late 20s, so just to backtrack a little bit, I actually went to Israel when I was, right after my bar mitzvah, when I was 13 years old. By the way, I forgot to mention, my bar mitzvah wasn't actually like a real bar mitzvah, like you laying the Torah and you remember your parsha. My bar mitzvah was, me saying the brachas of the Torah, the two brachas, the opening bracha and the closing bracha, in a Russian restaurant called National on Brighton Beach. Some of you guys watching may know. And there was a party, there was a challah, my whole family was there, whatever it was, friends, parents, friends. That was my bar mitzvah when I was 13, and then the summer after my bar mitzvah, my parents and I went to Israel. We visited our friends who lived there in Natzeret Illit before they were religious. They were still secular. The guy was trying to get my father to eat pork. My father said, "What do you mean we don't eat?" We actually did not eat pork. And the guy tells my father, "Come on, you're in the land of Israel now. It's a holy land. You can do, big deal."
It's so counterintuitive.
It's just like,
you're in the holy land. You can do whatever you want.
But that's Israelis. Like, we're in the land. We don't need to do mitzvot. We don't need to do mitzvot. That's their mentality. You talk to any secular Israeli. I'm in the land. What do I need? Like, I'm good. That's enough. So, and it's funny. 2 years later, the guy calls him up. Igor, guess what? I'm Chabad now. Not only Chabad, I'm Meshachist.
Go back to eating pork.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. L'chaim, l'chaim. That was a good joke. Anyway.
let's try to get somewhere.
Yeah, so basically, late 20s. Yeah. Why did I tell you about Israel? So now I'm on a birthright trip when I think I'm 26 or 27, talking like 2007. And I'm on this birthright trip, and I was always into like Israeli politics and Middle East and foreign policy. So out of 40 kids on my birthright trip, I was the only person that knew anything about the Middle East, about Israel, about the history, about the military, whatever it was. And we're traveling the land, and we're on a bus, and I'm literally everywhere we go, I feel energy. and I feel different types of energy, different parts of the country. I feel energy. We go to Tzvi, I feel a certain type of energy. I don't know what I'm like, how to quantify it. I just know that it's.
You're feeling it.
I know I'm feeling something.
You're feeling something.
Yeah, Jerusalem, I'm feeling like heavy. Tel Aviv, it's like like light. We go, I don't know, Haifa, this kind of whatever it is, Rosh Hanikra, and I'm just like, okay, something is going on here. And I remember a friend of mine in 2003. When I was just kind of still in college, a friend of mine from Paramus, New Jersey made, hey, Eli Katz, if you're going to watch this, made Aliyah. I remember him training for the army. He went to the army, went to the Golani Brigade. He had to jump through hoops because he was 23 years old when he made Aliyah. He didn't go through the whole high school after post-high school system. And then he went to Ulpan, and he met the woman who's now his wife, who's from France. And I started thinking to myself, it was like a little, little thing that got activated in my brain, maybe I could live here someday. But it wasn't like a reality yet. I was like, maybe I could live here someday. I don't even know what that would mean or how I would do this or what and how and why, but I was just like, this would be a cool place to live. So I went home, and then and I just was continuing. I was actually traveling. I went to Argentina, and then the subsequent year I went to a friend's wedding in 2008, separately of Birthright. That's when I saw the real Israel. You travel the country and you see our friend talks about the Arsim and his friends, the Arsim, and the real, hey, so Ashdod, Rishon LeZion.
The Arsim calls it the Israeli Arsamites.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like what we call Israeli Guidos, So I went to, so my friend, he lived in Netanya with his wife in Ramat Peleg. We visited him. We went to all over. My friend's uncle lived in Malay Adumim. We saw the real Israel, how people actually live, not Birthright fantasy tour, or what they call timeshare tour. Mm-hmm. And I saw my friend essentially living the dream in Israel with his wife. They lived in some guy's basement in Ramat Peleg, a really nice house, the basement apartment. And I saw this guy. He had a kippah. He was living kind of like a Torah life, kind of dati lumi, what they call guy. He had a job. He had a wife. And I saw this guy praying. I remember I saw him praying right before he went to sleep. He was praying, and I asked him, "What are you reading?" He's like, "This is the bedtime prayer, bedtime Shema." Or as we know, is the Kriyas Shema al Mita.
Kriyat Shema Sha'al Mita.
Yeah. And so I came back from that trip, and that was in the summer of 2008. September 2008, I get an email from a friend, non-religious friend, Russian Jewish friend, and the email says, it's a forward from this organization called RAGE, Russian American Jewish Experience, that says, have you been on Birthright before? Do you want to learn Torah? And go to Israel again. I'm in Israel. I'm in America, and I start attending these classes at Rage. Mm-hmm. And
that's here in New York.
Yeah, that's here in New York. That's in Brooklyn. So I'll give you kind of the picture. So I'm living at that time in I had an apartment in Fort Lee, New Jersey, which is right by the George Washington Bridge. So and I'm still working. This is the tail end of my career in trading. I didn't know that at the time. And I'm doing fairly well. I'm whatever it is, paying, have no trouble financially, paying my bills, doing my thing, having a good time, traveling the world, still listening to music, going to whatever it is, going to Miami once a year for Winter Music Conference, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, excuse me, and I started going to these classes. These classes are once a week, every Thursday evening, 3 hours.
So they're going on right now, and we're here.
I think there's no. So that they stopped because they had two different programs at that time. They had a Thursday night program, and they had a Sunday night program. Two different groups of people. The Thursday night people were the people in their late 20s, late 20s, professionals, and the Sunday was the college kids. Nowadays, all they have is college kids. They don't have the late 20s people because for whatever reason. So at that time, so the way that it worked was there was 3 hours, and I guess Rabbi Katzin, if you're watching this, he was a part of it. It was the first hour was we had an hour of Talmud from Rabbi Reuven Hoskin. If you're watching this, hi Rabbi Reuven. The second hour was a guest speaker, and I think the third hour was Rabbi Katzin, and he was giving us a Chumash class. So every single Thursday, the story was like this. I had these classes, and then right after the classes, I would call up my friends, and I would say, okay, where am I meeting you guys tonight? You know, which DJ we're going to go here? Which bar are we going to? So that was pretty much my life for for about, like probably 6 or 7 months, from 2008 to 2009. So now imagine a guy, he's learning Torah, he's learning, by the way, we had to do not only these classes, we had to do mandatory Shabbatons. We had to participate in Shabbat. I think it was like 1 Shabbat or 2 Shabbats every semester. It was 2 semesters. So imagine a guy who's like going to clubs and doing this and doing that. All of a sudden, he finds himself at a Shabbos table in Muncie, at the home of a rabbi who's the rabbi at Or Sameach in Muncie. I remember, I think it was like Rabbi Reich in Muncie, who was part of Or Sameach. I remember my first Shabbaton.
Or Sameach was Asia Torah branched out of Or
Sameach, and there's an Or Sameach in Jerusalem, so they have an Or Sameach in Muncie. So imagine, like, I'm sitting there at this guy's table. It was like a big, oneg tish, whatever it is, and I'm sitting there and I'm having such a good time, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm 27 years old, and I'm asking the question, where the heck has this been all my life? And how come I only found out about this now? This Hana and this Mechai, as we say in Yiddish.
The Hana and the Mechai.
Yeah, it's just...
At
the same time, I was like ecstatic and happy, but at the same time, I was like furious. It was infuriating. It was like you missed the boat. It was like
the rage and the fury.
Exactly, rage. Yeah, it's funny. So when I was already living in Israel, I would join one of the rage trips. So I went to the hotel in the Jerusalem, tower or whatever, on King George Street.
King George.
Yeah. So we get into the elevator. There's a group there from Los Angeles, Persian kids on the Birthright, and this girl goes, "Are you guys with the angry Russian group?" Rage. It's hilarious. Oh my God. We were in the elevator.
It's such an appropriate name for Russians.
It was hilarious.
We are rage.
Yeah, someone called Raj. No.
Rage.
Rage.
Feel the rage.
Exactly. Anyway, so yeah, and at some point, I started to feel myself leading a double life. And I started watching, somebody turned me on to that website, TorahAnytime.com. And then I started watching things like Laser Brody and all the, I actually started watching Rabbi Mizrahi, who you adore. Rabbi Wallerstein, Rabbi Aderet, and I was sitting, a guy with long hair and like a hipster out, jeans and a t-shirt, sitting there watching some of the most Haredi rabbis ever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this makes sense. Every 2 seconds, this makes sense. Yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right. This makes sense. This makes sense. I'm just like on loop in my head. It's like downloading, red pill.
Then you get up and you're like,
and then I get up and I'm like,
I know Kung Fu.
Yeah, it's like, I'm telling you, I know. It's like, and I was like, I know too much. Whoa, after
they knew too much.
After a year and a half, I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm ready now to I don't know, be a mikubal or something. I was just like, okay, But then I'm just like, okay, I have the friends that I have. My parents, my dad kind of knows certain things and he accepts certain things. My mom doesn't accept this stuff. She thinks it's all crazy, at least culturally. The friends that I have, I had one friend who was like virulent atheist, another friend who was like his rabbi was Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins. Another friend who was just kind of saw it as like a cultural,
the opiate of the masses.
Yeah, he thought it was like a cultural abomination. He laughed at the Hasidic people or whatever it was. Yeah, so that was like my surroundings, and I started gravitating away from those friends, and I started gravitating towards a completely different group of people.
And this is at what age?
29, 30. And then I went on the rage trip to Israel, and that's...
So this is, you've already been on Birthright, but this is a
Birthright, and then I saw my friend who was, made Aliyah, and now we're on this is like 2009 on the rage trip, and that's when everything kind of, it's like, with our powers combined, we're Captain Planet, everything started getting integrated, like...
The power is yours.
Torah,
the Megazord.
Yeah, exactly. They took us to Rabbi David Aaron, they took us to Israel,
my neighbor.
They took us to Ace, whatever, the quick Ace Essentials, like one of these classes.
Of Monty Burger?
Yeah, wasn't Burger, it was
Gil
somebody,
Box?
it was, no, it was actually,
Gerald
it was,
Schroeder?
no, it was our one of our rabbis, Rabbi Goldstein, David Goldstein, who actually used to be in Essentials, trained rabbi at Aish, and then he came back to America to teach at Rage.
My father used to teach at Aish some 35 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. So, you know, that was that. And then on that trip, I remember walking in the old city, actually, and I was just like, okay, something's happening. You know? Still with the long hair, still with, you know, just a white t-shirt,
Dude,
shorts.
you still have long hair.
I know, but I'm talking about, like, I can show you guys, by the way, before, we'll also show before and after pictures through this video. We'll
Yes,
add
no,
the
and the
music
editing,
and
the
this,
YouTube and the editing, I'll put it in.
it was not super long, it was longer than this. Let's put it this way. If I walked around like this, and, you know, here, people would be like, this guy's whatever. So, yeah, and I was like, okay, something's happening, and then at some point I was like, okay, I want to live a Torah life. In my brain, it's just like, okay, I want to live a Torah life. I don't see myself doing it in America, culturally or spiritually. I want to move to Israel. How do I make that happen? Without getting too much detail, on that trip I met a woman who lived in Tel Aviv at the time. She was secular. She had made Aliyah a few years back.
Every time you slam the couch, you're like, plonk. I have to edit that out.
Sorry.
One more time.
No, there's rabbis that I know. I go over a certain rabbi's house, and every time he makes a point, he's like, and Yosef said, and why, and the and Rashi said, and he just slams the table every point he makes, and it's just like,
well, it's better, like, Moti Berger is like,
yeah, exactly, he slaps you, he slaps you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My student thinks I'm
Are you an animal or are you a human being? You're both. That's Moti Berger.
Oh my gosh.
That was an imitation.
Just so you know, my father is the one who introduced him to Aish Torah.
Good.
He's like, I know a guy.
And now,
and
now Moti Berger's anti-Zionist. That's good. He had him and Ken Spiro had a debate. It's on YouTube about the army. Anyway, won't go there. You look perplexed. In one of the classes, he's like, "How many of you here love your girlfriend or your wife?" Or
yes. Your wife? Then he goes, "Do you like?"
He's like, "If no." He's like, "If you loved her, you know what you would do? You would find her a guy." No, he's like, "You don't love her. You love yourself. You would find her a guy who's better than you."
Yes.
So anyway, you don't love her. You love yourself.
Are we getting close to 2 hours?
Yes. Hour 40. No, it's okay. Hour and a half. Anyway, so. Great trip. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Mr. Bond. I want you to tell the rest of the story. Anyway, so yeah, and I met this person and we started dating, kind of. We started talking. I went back to the States and, long story short, I started the process for Aliyah, and I ended up, essentially when I made Aliyah in 2010, I ended up living with this lady in Tel Aviv. So now I'm like this guy who wants to, you know, progress and grow in Torah, and I'm a little bit being held back. You know, we were kind of keeping Shabbat. We were having Shabbat meals for, you know, her friends were coming over, stuff like that. I didn't, you know.
She's the one who was anti?
She wasn't anti. She was She is an archaeologist in Tel Aviv University, and yeah, you know, she grew up a certain way. She was sent to Hebrew school, whatever it was, and it was kind of like there was a lot, you know, a lot of kids who go to Hebrew school as a kid. There's a lot of damage, a lot of stigma, negative connotations, and she just wasn't, you know. We were talking about archaeology. Your father's an archaeologist, so like in her case, everything they find is, you know, it's a Canaanite cult stand. You know, it's not a bima from blah. It's something Canaanite. It's something Natufian. It's something this. Nothing to do with Tanakh. Nothing to do with proving anything. You know, when I told you the story when Einat Mazar would find something and she would say, "Oh, this is from Shlomo Melech." Okay, debatable, but my ex would be like, "How?" She was just up in arms. Totally up in arms. And, you know, we had a Jerusalem Bible in the apartment that was just, it was an academic book. It wasn't a holy book, so to speak. Yeah, so that was my life in Tel Aviv for about a year and a half. And then eventually I decided, okay, you know, I have to end this relationship. And yeah, beginning of 2012, I found myself doing this program with this wonderful rabbi whose name is Rabbi Jacobowitz. It was called Yeshiva Light. And so all of a sudden, I went from living in Tel Aviv, in Tzfon Tel Aviv, to living for 3 weeks in Bases Royal. Beis Israel.
Oh, Bet Israel.
Bet Israel, a neighborhood
It's
of
like Mea
Mea Sharim,
Next to the
basically.
Mir.
For 3 weeks. We were actually supposed to live in Machan Yaakov in Har Nof, but they couldn't host us, so we ended up living in a place called Nesivas Aaron.
For our Sephardi friends,
Yeah.
Netivot Aharon.
Yes. It was a place for guys who were already in the Baal Teshuva yeshivas to want to, go to learn the next level. It's kind of like a Midrash Shmuel kind of place, or Rabbi, was it Klein's or whatever? These small yeshivot for Baal Teshuva guys to learn on a higher level. For guys that don't want to go to, like, say, the Mir, they want to go to these small environments.
You want to go to Jitomir.
Huh? What is it? What did you call it?
Jitomir.
Jitomir, exactly. So yeah, I'm living.
Jid in the Mir.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden, I find myself living in Mea Sharim for 3 weeks, but we were like, this rabbi, he took us around the country. We were traveling the country. He took us to, he showed us Rabbi Kiva's, tomb in Tiberias. He took us to all, he took us to, we went to Tzvi. We went to basically, we saw Kevers, we saw...
It was a very serious tour.
It was
very grave.
Exactly. No, but everywhere we went in Israel, he would give us like a reference point from the Tanakh and from the Torah, and this is this mountain from the Gemara, and this is this place from blah blah blah. And we didn't even go to Judea and Samaria, mind you. At this point,
most of the Gemara we're talking about the Galilee anyway.
Galil, the south, Yavna, whatever it was. Yeah. So, and honestly, I'll tell you, and that's when I started seeing. We went to like a wedding in Beit Vagan. It was my first ever, my second ever, Orthodox wedding. Actually, first wedding in Israel, Orthodox wedding in Israel that I attended. And I was just wow, this is so different. You have the Mechitza thing, you have the whole, you're at this wedding and you see for the first time, people are not worried about, looking over at the girls and the guys looking over the girls looking at the guys. People are just focused on having a good time and dancing at the wedding. You may have your opinions on that.
Yes, you notice that I'm holding back.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm just saying, but for me it was kind of like such a, I came from the mixed, what I call the mixed dancing world in the clubs, where everyone's just like, oh, how do I look? Is this girl looking at me? I'm looking at this girl. People are so self-conscious. Yes. You're at a frum wedding and people are just letting loose because there's no... Okay, maybe the girls are standing by the mechitza looking at the guys, peeking over, whatever it is, but it's not so...
Yeah, that's when the shidduchim used to happen.
They
wouldn't have a mechitza.
The
mechitza is a new thing.
Sure.
The dancing would be separate.
Yeah.
But you'd have a table in the middle with the shadchan and you'd say, who's that?
Yeah.
Because
So, after that whole kind of experience, I went to yeshiva in a place called Chappelle's. For Bali Tshuva in Darchino, Beit HaKerem. And why did I go to this yeshiva? Looking back, this yeshiva is known for... It was started by actually a rabbi or two rabbis who actually were part of Aish. And they had their differences with Rabbi Noach Weinberg, bless his memory. Noach Weinberg, he wanted to create a system where, you probably know better than I do, he wanted to produce Kiruv rabbis, essentially. Eventually. That's what it turned into.
Matrix's language, agents.
Exactly. He wanted to produce agents, and these gentlemen wanted to, Rabbi Karlinsky and Rabbi Hirschfeld wanted to create something else, which is teach people who did not grow up with the Torah to learn how to actually learn on a technical level, how to open a sefer, how to open a Gemara, and how to be able to read. And there's all these technical terms in the Gemara, for example, what is Ela Im Kain? What is Kamash Malan? What is this? What is that? You have the Jastrow Talmudic Dictionary.
Kimta?
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. What is what's another term? Kal v'chomer, whatever it is. Kal v'chomer. Tashma. What are all these things, and how do these things, what's called function terms, help you learn the Gemara? How do you learn Rashi? How do you connect that to the inside to the sugya? How do you learn Tosafos? There's a whole system to this that you, growing up, let's say, maybe naturally learn because you learned that as since you're a kid.
Not naturally. I started when I was in 7th grade.
I'm saying you learned it since you're a kid, and you don't even. It's intuitive. For us as adults, guys who come, even in their 20s, there's a whole thing. There's a whole system.
All this Aristotelian logic in Aramaic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For me, it was like I remember my first Hevruta session, and I'm sitting, actually, Mr. Roy Barron, my first Hevrusa, if you're watching. It was a fun time, man. We're sitting there, and there's no nikudot, there's no vowels. It's this language that's pretty much dead, except for the Gemara and a few academics, a few professors who speak it fluently. And I'm hacking through this thing, and at that time I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I was getting anything spiritual out of it because, and this is actually what I'm going to come to now, one of the, having to do with the title of this podcast.
Almost 2 hours in,
yes,
and we're finally
at the crescendo. How Kiruv ruined my life.
To quote Home Alone.
Yeah.
Harry,
I've reached the top. Exactly. So this yeshiva was focused on the technical, what's called lamdus aspect of Torah, and it got to a point for me where you're learning something and you're just trying to get through the text and you're just trying to get through the technicalities of it all, and you're losing the actual text itself and the spiritual aspects of the text.
No, it was like,
or maybe even in the
here, to rephrase this and maybe see if I understand.
Yeah.
When you come to learning Gemara without any background,
Yeah.
you come to ask, what does this have anything to do with living as a Jew?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with me?
Yeah.
Why am I learning about if a bull gores an ox?
Yeah.
An ox gores
No,
it. Like
that part is fine. My issue was, why can't we just get to the nitty gritty of it? I wanted to learn about the logical, acrobatics already. My problem was I didn't have the language skills down. I didn't have the skills down to get there. But I didn't care. You know what I'm saying? I already wanted to get into that logical thing. I didn't have, I guess, maybe the focus of the energy to hack through the technicalities of it all. And this school that I went to, that was their thing. They're forcing you.
So it gave you
and I just couldn't pay attention. Well, it tried. I couldn't pay attention.
So what wasn't working?
My ADD. Not just my ADD. It was one of those things where I looked at the guys who were in the higher shears. I was saying to myself, I'm not dumber than them. I want to learn with them. I remember sitting with a guy at some point. It was a friend of mine who was this guy from Australia. He was already in the 4th or 5th year, and we sat for 15 minutes, and I told him, listen, I want to learn with you for 15 minutes with, you'll read to me, you'll do the Hazara, and we'll go through the actual logic. I don't want to bother with the text. I want to go through the Rashi and the Tosafos. So we started, and we ended up winding ourselves and tying ourselves in these crazy logical knots, and I was like, okay, so this is hard. The logical part is hard. Not the text, not just the technical, but I'm like, okay, I see why these teachers who know what they're talking about, they've been doing since the 70s, this whole system they developed, why they want me to go through the skills part first and the text part first.
You're saying in a good sense you got it.
I finally had gotten it, but that doesn't mean I was happy. Because I was still kind of I'm not getting, hashkafically, philosophically speaking, I wasn't getting anything out of that yeshiva that I was at.
It was just okay, so I now figured out how to engage intellectually in this, but what the hell is this?
Exactly. I mean, I knew, listen, we learned halacha, we learned, that we had a hashkafa class, for example, we had comparative, what's Chabad, what's this, what's that.
I know Kung Fu. But
exactly.
Why exactly am I fighting?
Exactly. Why am I even need to use this? Yeah, so that was that. But at the same time, though, apart from the yeshiva I was in, I started going to different classes in different yeshivot and different classes around town. I was going to Rabbi Scheinberger's Tanakh Shir on Sundays in the Arab quarter. He had a Tanakh Shir.
Muslim quarter.
In the Muslim quarter.
Rabbi Scheinberger.
Yes, Rabbi Mordechai Scheinberger.
When I was a kid, he would say, I should stay by him all week and eat fish.
Yeah.
He has fish every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
He's a character.
Mm-hmm. He's one of these people. I don't know how old he is now. At the time that we were in Shir,
he founded the town Oreganuz.
I know, and he lives in Jerusalem.
He lives on my street.
Can I tell you another disappointing thing? We had a Shabbaton in Oreganuz with my yeshiva, and I was like, yes, Oreganuz, I'm going to get to learn with these guys, these dudes who stay up till 3 learning Kabbalah. You know where they had to stay? A different part of the property, on our own thing, just with ourselves, and that was it.
Wait, what?
They had us go, we had a Shabbaton in Or HaGanuz with chapels, And I was so excited because I knew about organuz. My friend told me about organuz.
And you didn't get to actually see
I didn't get to see these Mikubal guys and learn with them Kabbalah, deep Sod, Torah, Kabbalah. I was like, yes, organuz. Nothing. Gornish. Nada. Zilch. I had to sit with my, my friends. What did we do? We had an oneg, and we talked about. I don't know what this Shabbaton was. It was to me. It was useless. Like, why am I here? Anyway, another point. So
as you keep slapping the couch.
Sorry. So I think looking back, I was looking for what I was looking for, and I actually at that time didn't know where to find it because nobody really directed me. I was looking for what I like to call the Tom of Torah. I was looking for, what Rabbi Schloss in the Old City says, if you're not learning the pneumius of Torah,
the inside, the internal,
then you are eating chicken soup without the salt. And that's when I was looking also, I was looking for Gemara, Talmud, but I was also looking for that other side, which I wasn't...
eating the hamajin without the meat.
Exactly. And I remember one distinct moment in my yeshiva where the Rosh Yeshiva brought new guys in after 2 weeks to speak to him and, just kind of a review and ask him, he would ask you like, oh, how you doing? How do you, how you like the yeshiva? And he asked me, he was like, no, so you like it here? I'm like, well, I told him I really we had a once a week Hasidus class, Rabbi Aryeh Goldschmidt, the brother of Zach Goldschmidt from Zusha. And he would teach us, 1 week it was time.
Is he the one from Silver Spring?
Geisen is from Silver Spring. I don't know.
Okay.
I think they're both from Silver Spring. But Aryeh, he was actually used to be a Shatnez rabbi in Tzfat, and then he became a rabbi at Chappelle's. So he, 1 week we learned Tanya. Tanya. Next week we learned Likutei Moharan, and I really enjoyed his shir. And the rabbis at Chappelle's, he was like, "So, how do you like it?" I really like Rabbi Goldschmidt's Hasidus, and the rabbi goes, well, yeah, it's not really my thing, but, we like him. We're thinking of hiring him. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean it's not your thing? I didn't understand the chasm between the people who are part of the Litvak community. I didn't know about this whole Gaon Vilna versus Baal Shem Tov thing. I didn't understand. I came up to one of my friends in yeshiva. I was like, this guy told me he doesn't like Hasidah, and he explained to me the whole thing. I'm like, I still don't understand. How can you not learn the esoteric part of that's Torah too? That's all. I was so naive. I was like, this is also Torah. He's like, well, you see, they have their own books. They also learn their thing. They have Nefesh HaChaim. They have their own. They have Nesil Sishar and whatever. I'm just like, okay, so why not learn this too? Like, why can't you be a well-rounded person?
Like Ace Ventura.
Yeah. Ah! Yeah. Ah! My brain was like not. I was like, does not compute. Does not come. Breaking down. Like, whatever. And so then a few months into this whole thing, I was introduced to actually my friend who I told you about, Yehuda Cohen. He's a teacher at Mahon Meir. And I remember meeting him, and he picked me up from yeshiva, and we were in the car, and I told him all this stuff that I just told you, and he goes to me, my friend, the Kiruv yeshivas, the Balshuva Kiruv yeshivas, there's a big problem with them. What are they trying to do? What's their goal? Their goal is to give you a very specific shita, philosophy, ideology, the goal of which is to make you into a productive member, a good little penguin, productive member of Chutz La'aretz. Yeah.
Eat, breed, have children.
No, not just that.
Learn.
They want you to go back to America, and they want you to be a productive member of Western society. Chutz La'aretz, as he calls it, the diaspora, whatever it is, outside the land of Israel. He told me, you seem to me like a person who wants, he goes, they have a limited Torah. He's like, if you ever ask yourself the question, I asked them, like, why do some of these rabbis, for example, there was a couple of rabbis in my yeshiva, they say, on Yom Ha'atzmaut, they say halal without a bracha. And I asked them my question, he goes, because they have a limited Torah. They don't understand that this was a seminal moment in our history. This is his, opinion, obviously. You can probably argue on that. In his opinion...
going there.
I'm saying, we won't go there. I'm just saying his point was, the point of what he was saying was that when you have a limited Torah, then it ends at Gemara and it ends at certain things, and it doesn't go to the core of the issue, which is now we have the land of Israel, the state of Israel, and now we have the totality of the Torah, which, you know, can only be, I guess, achieved, or you can only integrate certain things when you're in the land. When you're outside the land, it just goes back to being a portable religion, you know, Christianized, Catholicized, Puritanized, whatever you call it. And this is what I've seen since I've been back in America for the last 5 years, essentially. You know, because whatever I acquired, of, let's say Judaism, I acquired in the land of Israel. You know, you look at me, you see, you know, this is the ikar of our conversation. You look at me, I'm wearing jeans and I'm wearing a, you know, not a white shirt and a kippah sruga. Yeah.
In a nutshell,
yeah.
Your entire story of starting to come to recognize Judaism as something real,
yeah,
and God and all of that as something which I guess needs to be done, but is totally fine and doable here, to it can only really be in connection with Israel. I just happen to have to be here now.
Yeah.
It's wow.
Yeah. Listen, in Israel,
without slapping the
I was telling my friend today a certain thing, that in Israel it's not, you know, we're talking about like lifestyle. There's a lot of people who look, for example, go to yeshiva in Israel, then they come back to America, they drop off, you know, they stop keeping Shabbat and all these things because they can't keep up with a lifestyle for whatever reason. And I was saying that, you know, there's some movement right now happening in Israel that, you know, this is something that Rav Kook was talking about 100 years ago, where there's a totality now. There's this like vitality and totality where it's not a religion, it's not a lifestyle, it just is. You know? It's just a thing. It's our national primordial indigenous culture. So for me, you know, when I came back to America, I became a, you know, it's like a polar bear from Antarctica who's now in the Bronx Zoo. I'm out of my habitat. You know, I'm the same polar bear kind of. I'm eating the same food, but I'm just like, why am I in Central Park? And why are people coming and watching me, and, you know, in this case, criticizing me and calling me this and calling me that and boxing me in, and, you know, I'm in a tank, basically. I'm in a nutshell. Exactly. Exactly. Hello, Scott. All I asked for was a freaking rotating pod, okay? Got no vomit. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, I'm feeling sick. Anyway, for the past 5 years. Okay.
Get to the part where Kiruv actually...
So Kiruv,
what does it do
ultimately,
to you today?
man, in a nutshell, since we're in a nutshell now, you're in a nutshell.
Yes, here's my nutshell.
I know what I know, and now I'm going through a struggle, which is on many levels. You know, the struggle of, let's say, coming to this later in life in my 30s. So now, you know, you're told you have to get married. So now there are certain prohibitions for men, you know, on a, you know, sexually, let's say, without getting too deep into it. If you're not married,
So coming from dating in the secular world
secular
to dating
world,
in the religious
doing-
world is already
doing whatever
a
you
massive
want,
change.
yeah. You know, you're talking about the concept of Shomer Negia, turning off, like, you're essentially, I was 31 years old, and somebody, essentially it was implied that, okay, you're turning off the spigot now. You know, you're done. You can't touch a woman anymore, you go out, you know, and it was one of those things, for me, I felt like it was very, very emasculating. I'll go on dates with girls, and it's like, you can't, for me, you know, the way, how does a person show their affection, show that they're, you know, I guess attracted to someone?
So you can, assuming you've managed to, so to speak, assimilate well into the religious community,
No.
you've spent a year, maybe two dating, you're married, everything's fine. But 5 years, but if you didn't,
Yeah.
then 5 years later, you're probably losing your mind.
So, at some point, why did I come back to America? Because there was supposedly a salvation. I was engaged to somebody who lives here when I was 33. This was about a year after yeshiva. I was engaged to this young lady who lived here, and I came back, and everything kind of
Clicked.
in the beginning it clicked, and it was looking like it was going to be, you know, the thing. And then, without going to any details, you know, the Yetzer Hara worked its magic during the engagement period, and it kind of fell apart. So now I'm like this 33-year-old guy in America. I'm literally a polar bear out of my habitat, and now I have to start dating in the frum world and shidduch dating. So now you have like events, Shabbatons, people messaging and emailing you like some kind of rabbi, shadchans, community people, whatever, leaders, whatever it is, and no one understands what you are. No one can put you in a box. They don't understand where to even begin with you because you're just so not of this place. You're from, in my case, you're from Baka, Jerusalem. You're from Tekoa. You're from Shiloh. You're from, I don't know. You're definitely not from America. You're not from Flatbush. You don't belong in Flatbush. You don't belong in Passaic. You don't belong in Muncie. You don't belong in Five Towns. You don't even belong maybe even in Crown Heights. This place, people ask me, you're not Lubavitch, Tzvi, why do you live in Crown Heights? If you guys come here, this place has Kedushas Eretz Israel. I've been told that by many people, including you'll probably agree as well. There's something the Rebbe did, you can disagree or agree.
Well, I will say that as an Israeli living here, it's kind of comforting to hear a lot of Israelis here.
Yeah.
I don't know about
this place.
Eretz Israel, I have no comment.
Listen, get in your car and drive to Brighton Beach, you'll feel a different energy.
Yeah.
Than from here. You will. At least I do.
I don't know if I would call it Kedusha.
Something's going on here. So,
as a person who grew up in the old city of Jerusalem,
listen,
you
can't
compare.
You say in French, pardonnez-moi.
Mea culpa.
Yeah, mea culpa. So, so people, and I find myself just kind of being lost in this whole, it's a labyrinth. It's mamish a labyrinth. On many levels. And recently it has gotten to a point where now it's kind of like, I have this business. If a lot of people know the Heart of Israel wines, Baruch Hashem, and really, I'll say honestly, it's the only thing that's keeping me. First of all, it's the only thing that's keeping me here because the business revolves around setting up. We're selling, importing wine from Israel to the States, and it's also the thing that's keeping me conscious and in the zone and in the mode of actually being connected to Torah and the land of Israel. Because for me, it's one and the same. It's part of this trifecta that we spoke about yesterday at this event that you.
What was the word you used? Trifecta.
Trifecta, like a three trio, like three things. Torah, I think they mentioned Torah, land of Israel, and I think it was I remember the third thing. So it's keeping me connected. Otherwise, I don't think I would be. Honestly, I'll be totally honest. And it's a real, and I was telling a friend of mine, what's more painful, to know the truth and yet not adhere to it, or actually to adhere to it despite all the crazy challenges?
The Rambam would sign his letters while he was working for the Sultan as his doctor.
Mm-hmm.
In Egypt. He would sign his letters, I am the one who sins every day.
Mm-hmm.
By being stuck in Egypt.
Yep.
So sometimes life, you got to do what you got to do.
So now it's at the point where, my friend told me today, you got decisions to make, my friend. You have this business. I have a business partner. We're building something. Something is serious. Baruch Hashem. Hashem allowed me to go to Israel this year 3 times to visit Israel. Every time I go there, I don't go there for like
That's a lot.
I don't go there for a couple of days. I go there for at least 2-3 weeks, sometimes a month at a time. One time I went for 5 weeks. You just pretty much living there for like 5 weeks. Setting up shop. And that's pretty much my lifeline at this point. But at the same time, I speak to my friends and they tell me, listen, you got to get married, and it seems to me that the thing that's what's shaykh for you is to find somebody with. He told me, I'm sure you have to find somebody with your Torah or our Torah, and our Torah is in Israel. It's not here.
So I'm trying to understand. Again, this is about. You said Kiruv ruined your life. Yeah. So having become the person you've become, and I'm sure you are happy with who you are. You believe that you said, "Where has this been my whole life?"
No.
Right, but on the other hand, that has brought in the challenge of the dating process itself.
Yeah.
But then you're saying, had you been in Israel, you think you would find the right kind of person more readily than being here, where you really believe that the people you want would already be there.
Yeah, either they're on their way there or they're most likely there already.
So
Like
that
myself.
sounds more like just the choice of where you're living as opposed to Kiruv itself.
Well, the Kiruv itself, there's a chasm. Seems to me there's a chasm between obviously what's going on in Israel currently. And that's not to say in Israel that you don't have the Haredim and the Litvak and all this kind of stuff, but here there's very much a binary situation. Either you're religious or you're secular. Either you're
so interesting.
from you're wearing
You usually
a
say that about in Israel that people are more black and white. I mean, people
yes
expect
and
things to be
no.
black and white.
Do you have you've been to Rabbi Scheinberger's, for example, Minyan?
It's Shabbos.
Shabbos Minyan.
Yeah.
You got all you have like
All wax,
all wax,
all the wax,
all the wax
life.
of life. Yeah, exactly.
All the wax
all
of
the
life.
wackles of life. So I mean, I've never seen a Minyan like that in America. You will hard pressed to find. Maybe you'll go to Muncie, a couple of minyanim there I've seen, but it seems to me that in America it really is you're practicing a religion. You're not, again, if you live according to the precepts or the ideas of Rav Kook, you need the land of Israel, and if you don't have that, this is what the Kiruv world is selling to people. They're selling them a book, it's like a bill of goods, and some people buy into it. Some people become like Aish rabbis. Some people become campus, these guys come back and they become campus rebbeim. A couple of guys from Machan Yaakov, Machan Shlomo.
Mm-hmm.
But other people just get lost. Other people fall off. Like if I hadn't stayed in Israel for 3 years and just ingested all of this and absorbed all of this and just kind of like became the person I was, I don't think I'd be Shomer Shabbat today.
Tzvi, I'm trying to understand. So you're saying that Kiruv means the Kiruv you're familiar with means you need Israel, or is it saying it doesn't? And
No,
you wouldn't have this...
it's what it's doing is it's trying to create people who didn't grow up in a certain culture and in a certain community. It's trying to shove them into that box, and if you don't fit into that box, you're basically nowhere.
Okay, so you don't fit into that box.
Yes.
I don't fit into that box.
And yet I know what I know, and there's no going back. Now that I'm in America, there's no going back. I can't just stop being a Shomer Shabbat Jew. I can't stop keeping
What I'm
kosher.
trying to say to me is the Kiruv movement or organization has brought you to a place where you now live in a certain way. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Now, that way apparently is not making anything easier because they managed to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like they say, we want you to become more religious. You've become like more observant.
Yeah.
Okay, you've become more observant.
But it's in the certain way that they want.
But you haven't become in the way that they want. You've become in your own way.
That they design. Or in
Are
a way,
you a product of what they designed, or you figure it's your own way?
It's a combination of maybe my own way and also a certain movement in Israel. Like you're talking about, the settlers, the Dati Leumi, maybe like.
Is that what Machon Yaakov tried to create? Chappelle tried to create?
No.
So you found your own way.
Like in Chappelle's, you have a couple of guys like that, but most of those guys end up staying in Israel. They make an aliyah, like myself.
So let me put it this way. I'm going to press you a little bit.
Sure.
There's a difference between saying that Kiruv has put you in a place where you are now stuck because you're in a niche.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be successful in that niche. It's hard to find a wife in that niche. But there's also the things that you are doing. Like you're choosing to currently live here to do this and this and that. So you put yourself there.
Well, listen, right now it's just a circumstantial thing where I have a business and you can't just, as I told my friend, you can't, walk off the field in the middle of the game. You're on the 50-yard line, you're driving towards the, whatever, trying to get at least the first touchdown, so to speak, and you can't just walk off the field.
In the professional area.
As far as, everything else, again, like it really boils down to like there are certain ideologies in the what we spoke about, and again here it seems to me that it's like this Catholicized thing. How they approach dating, for example, how they approach relationships, and it's as a person who again didn't grow up in the culture, came to it in his 30s, it doesn't seem to me that it's what we call Torah Chaim, Torah's Chaim, the Torah of life. You know, if I call it, for example, I can call up my rabbi, and I did this. Remember we had this conversation, and I called him and I said, listen, I was offered to do a DJing gig in someone's house, and I said, listen, there's going to be mixed dancing. But I told him the context. I said, well, you know, there's, you know, the people there are people who grew up religious, and, you know, maybe some of them are trying to come back, some of them are kind of like, you know, having a difficult time. And he said to me, I want you to put on your tzitzis and your kippah, and I want you to, you know, play the music that you play, and it's going to be a Kiddush Hashem. And then we told our other friend, and he said, what kind of Orthodox rabbi is this? This is against halacha. And it seems to me, if you talk to the Kiruv world, they'll say the same thing as our friend. The context is missing. The Torah's Chaim is missing. The nuance, what you say, is missing. You know, there's no.
Are you?
Do you know what I'm saying?
It sounds like you're looking for this.
I'm looking for the holistic life.
But it seems almost like that you're expecting the religious world that you've ascribed to in some extent to solve your problems for you.
No, I'm. What I'm saying is, what I was looking for was a way to take the certain parts of my life that were not, in my opinion, necessarily what I call treif or asur, and to keep those things, because you can't just drop something when you at 31 years old, unless you're like, I don't know, you're just a fanatic or crazy. I don't know what you want to call it, but
I think these things are part of who you are.
it's part of who I am. It's the essence of who I am.
And
what I saw in the Kiruv community was that it was an implied
they're
thing
expecting you to be
drop
emasculated.
everything. Yeah, you're saying emasculate and drop everything and become like this, I don't know, monk or whatever.
We call that the Baal Tshuva phenomenon, which is what Ruth HaMoaviyah, when she came to Beit Lechem, we'll look at comments in a moment.
Sure.
She was expecting to be assimilated into the community in Beit Lechem of Judah. Everything's going to be nice and dandy.
Yep.
And when she comes up and she realizes that nobody's even talking to her, they're just pointing at Naomi and speaking about her in the third person, she, at that point, the verse says, it's Ruta Moaviyah kalata ima shava misde Moab, and Ruta Moaviyah. Beforehand, she was called Ruth Kalata. She was just called her daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
At this point, she switches to become Ruth the Moabite, because at this point she realized, I ain't dropping who I am to become one of you. I am me, and I'm going to come. This is what I'm bringing to the table. I'm not going to pretend to be something that I'm not, and always and forever be condemned to be a second-rate one of those.
Speaking of good Kiruv, this is why I appreciate Rabbi Schloss.
Yes.
Rabbi Schloss has a thing where he says two things. You can't give what you ain't got. And he also says, don't be who you are and don't be who you're not. And he always reminds, he has guys from Aish come to his house, and he always reminds guys from Aish who get caught up in this stuff, don't be who you're not, man.
I've heard people say, you see the before and the after, and these people that are coming to fundraise for these Kiruv organizations, look at the before, look at the after. You say, like, I'd give any money in the world to bring it back to that before. Because people just put themselves into this dream that I'm going to drop everything and everything's going to be fine. And I've seen people go through this. And
they break
people,
like stucco jobs.
They break. Like people who used to be musicians and artists. They were creative. And they somehow believe that God wants them to drop their creativity and their talent. Where's that coming from?
This is why I gravitated, because you see, some people watching may be offended. You see in the people who learn the esoteric part of Torah, let's say Hasidus and Kabbalah, they found a way, or figured out a way from that literature that you are able to mekadesh all those things.
You can sanctify, uplift them.
You have music, you have art, and you have you go to Tzvi, you have artists, Kabbalah, musicians. There's a way to elevate these things.
I'm just wondering if at this point there's any questions.
Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, so in short, it's one of those things where basically, now that I know what I will claim is the truth, and now that I'm kind of in it, there's no turning back.
Right. There's no turning back.
And a friend said it's a lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle. Ultimately, it's life. We're not practicing a religion. We're doing something. The question is, in my case, it's kind of like how committed I am to doing certain, let's say waking up in the morning and doing minyan, which is still a challenge for me. Learning Torah every single day is still a challenge for me. Saying something as simple as like an after bracha after I eat, still a challenge. That doesn't mean that the belief and the fervors and
just the routines and the practices
routines are
difficult.
Yeah,
that's difficult.
Yeah.
But once you the challenge seems to be not just kiruv, not just becoming observant and recognizing that this is Torah Chaim, but that the Torah of life, but also recognizing that you have something unique to bring to the table, and in order to be in touch with that and to be with integrity, you have to pay a price.
Of course.
And that price is difficult. That there's that point of no return is what we're talking about.
I have a friend who literally he's older than I am. I don't know if he keeps Shabbat. I don't think he does. But he believes in all this stuff. He's one of these people, he would give money to Yitzhar Yeshiva, Rabbi Ginsburg, that whole movement, Kahana stuff, all the settlements and Hilltop Youth and all these things. And yet, he's in the club world, he's in the restaurant world, he's in the bar world. He lives a double life.
You think he hasn't sufficiently addressed why the two things are not contradictory?
Well, no, he knows they're contradictory, but he hasn't figured out a way how to extricate himself from the former life, and he wants to move to Israel. I know for a fact, he's told me.
I just saw somebody who did a really funny thing. He posted a picture of his screen where on the bottom of his screen he has, on the one hand the tefillon, the siddur, and on the other one he has Tinder.
Yeah. Well, he's not that far. It's not that far. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. You know what's funny? My friend, who actually winemaker I met today, he told me that his friend, who's from Susia, he went off. He grew up religious, went off to derech in Israel, Israeli guy from a settlement, and he went on Tinder and he met his wife, the woman who became his wife, on Tinder. She was also off the derech. They both met, and now they're both back on the derech, and they have kids, and they got married, and they met on Israeli version of Tinder. I mean, it's Tinder.
What they call the old the hitchhike in an old car. It's called a tender.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's end with this, Tzvi.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and meet your 21-year-old self.
21. Oh my goodness.
What would you tell him?
Well, 21, I was just...
Basically, now, what would you tell
You're
yourself?
talking about... No, are you asking me the yeshiva part or just 21?
No, the Wall Street guy.
Oh, the guy who has started at Wall Street? I would tell him, Actually, I would tell him, try going to yeshiva in Israel. Actually, I'll tell people the one regret I have in my life, I don't have many regrets. I could, but I don't. But the one real regret I have is I never did the IDF. I would tell that guy, go do the army, and then go to one of these Hesder or whatever, the yeshiva for army guys, and then go to Ulpan, make aliyah, go to Ulpan, meet a girl, get married, and live the rest of your life. That's what I would tell that guy.
Hopefully that would work out. Yeah.
Tzat Hashem. But who knows?
Let's see the questions.
Oh, wow, okay.
You can pick it up.
Atara Esther. What does she say? Very interesting question. Have you found your experience in Kiruv accrue across the whole Kiruv world, considering that even within the Kiruv world there are different approaches and methodologies?
Can you explain the question as you understood it so everybody can hear it?
Have you found your experience in Kiruv true across the whole Kiruv world, considering that even within the Kiruv world there are different approaches and methodologies? You're talking about... if you're talking about, let's say, you have the Litvaks and Chabad and different groups, some experiences have been different in terms of the learning and in terms of just the approaches of what, how to teach and what to teach, or how to teach it. Let's say some people like to teach, their thing is okay, you have to learn Hasidus, and that's very important. Some people say you have to learn Gemara, that's very important. Some people say you have to learn, Rav Kook, that's important. That to me is not a problem. My issues have been across the board in the Kiruv world or in the From world. There's big issues within Shidduchim in that they don't understand Baalei Tshuva. And they don't understand people like
I
myself.
I knew there's this Russian guy,
Yeah.
genius, brilliant guy,
Yeah.
learning in some yeshiva in Beit Vagan,
If you wanna-
and people would not,
Home and garden.
they wouldn't properly set the guy up
Yeah.
because he's Baal Tshuva,
Yeah.
and they would Baal Tshuva was synonymous with, what do you call it? In Hebrew we say Sug Bet. In other
Yeah.
words, he's like
Yeah.
lower grade,
Yeah.
type B. What's the expression for
Yeah.
it?
Type B. Like just second class citizen.
Second class citizen,
Yeah.
which is like, on the contrary, this
Yeah.
person should be. Look what they've been through. Look,
It's sad. It's a sad
and
thing.
instead it just becomes such a
If
stigma.
you're like part of the Haskalah or something, it's almost like they're looking at you like you're some kind of, I don't know what, too smart, too intelligent. Like girls have a bigger problem. Girls who are too smart and too intelligent and too educated, forget it. They're not.
No,
Even,
since the
they
base,
can't even be
the
wise.
base Yaakov movement,
It's crazy.
women are having an education. I mean, they're having a hard time
You're-
finding men who are properly educated.
I'm saying, but you're reverting back to
Right.
like that movie Stepford Wives. You know, you have to be this little Adel, Holla Bakery girl.
It's like
and-
Jane Austen.
Yeah. No. My father just wrote in all capital letters.
Yes.
What I taught my son, capital letters, nothing accidental, everything, I said this in the beginning. Every
Yes.
event that happened to you is written long before it happened. Your mission is to figure it out and find the right answer.
Bloody brilliant.
Thought about my father. I just want to say my mother, if she's watching this, she's a tzaddik, she's tzaddikus, because throughout this whole process, we have Shabbos dinner at our house.
Mm-hmm.
My parents started keeping, on some level, Shabbat. My mother is the orchestrator and the I don't know, like hands of the operation of the Shabbat meals, and without her, none of this is possible. And yeah,
For her, we should probably be singing Eshet Chayil.
My father we sing it, and then my father says it in Russian. There's a Russian version of Eshet Chayil.
The Woman of Valor.
And then
What does it sound like in
well,
Russian?
and when he gets to the part about she has servants, my mother's like, "Hello, where are my servants?"
How does Eshet Chayil start in Russian?
Женщина, something like a woman.
Just say it for the people
I actually don't remember. It's a very like high Russian kind of high literature translation. I don't remember.
See, there's 3 different kinds of Russian. There's High Russian, there's Street Russian, and then
just
there's
cursive.
Jail Russian.
And then there's IDF Russian. Yeah,
No,
exactly.
there's jail Russian.
Jail
My friend
Russian.
in the army
Yeah.
said the Russians, whenever they talk,
Yeah.
everything they say sounds like they're cursing.
Exactly. It's true. Guys, watch. It's not so tznius. Go on YouTube and watch Moroccan versus Russian. It's a Moroccan guy and Netanya versus a Russian guy, and they're
Eshet
having
Chayil,
very nice conversation.
mulher de valor.
Oh, nice.
In Portuguese, mulher de valor.
Yeah, woman of valor.
Yeah. Quem busca. Mulher de valor, quem busca.
Yep.
All right, guys.
All right.
Let's go off. Good night, everybody. Get some
I
sleep.
hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it wasn't too long or too annoying or too
Here we go.
draggy. And if it was, it is what it is.
It is what it is.